Minutes.
I thank the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last month most Americans filled out what is probably the most complicated and lengthy federal income tax return in our history. Most everyone agrees that our nation's tax system is totally flawed and in need of considerable reform. The tax code is so complex that more than 80% of individual taxpayers either use an accountant or a computer-based program to prepare their tax returns. The IRS estimates that Americans spend 6.6 billion hours and $194 billion each year to comply with a tax code that has far too many complicated provisions which require special paperwork and detailed record keeping. Our tax code has become more and more a complex, burdensome, and expensive drag on the economy, which we can ill afford in the middle of a severe economic downturn. It also harms America's businesses' ability to compete in the global marketplace by discouraging saving, by discouraging investing, by discouraging risk-taking. American workers are now asked to work for 3 full months to pay for their annual federal, state, and local taxes. It is totally unacceptable to require already stressed families to give up at least a quarter of their income to prop up an expanding federal bureaucracy while everyone else is making significant sacrifices. Instead of searching for a way to provide tax relief to American households, some administration officials have proposed new tax schemes that will further burden small businesses and consumers. One of the worst of these is the European-style value-added tax, VAT, which would levy a complicated tax at each stage of manufacturing, thereby adding a hidden cost to the finished product. This is damaging not only to the consumer, but also to many industries involved in manufacturing, which have been hard hit during this recession. Instead of adding new taxes, Congress should be focused on reforming the current tax structure. I join many of my colleagues in the House who have asked the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, to schedule hearings on tax code simplification. The last major reform of the tax code took place over a quarter century ago in 1986, and while far from perfect, helped reduce the harm inflicted on the economy in many ways. The guiding principles of the 1986 reform were that it must not increase the total tax burden while lowering individual and corporate income tax rates. Tax reform must not be used as a subterfuge for increasing taxes, as it needlessly complicates an already difficult issue with controversial questions about whether the combined tax burden should be higher or lower. Mr. Speaker, businesses and families need a stable and uncomplicated tax code. Businesses need to know how high their taxes will be in future years to make decisions now about hiring and expanding. Families need to know how high their taxes will be before they make decisions about large expenditures. A constantly changing tax code makes it difficult for businesses and families to make these decisions. The tax code has become sufficiently complex and harmful that a major rewrite is in order, and if Congress passes tax reform, it should consider making a commitment to keep the reformed tax code in place for as many years as possible. Congress must remember the sacrifices made by all of America's families. The American people need action that will break the barriers of an unfair and complicated tax system, and Congress must respond because the future health of the U.S. economy demands it. I thank the Speaker for the time.
The gentlelady